Welcome to the Perfect Pairing Podcast. The cigar of the week this week is the trifecta finish of Artista's line. The Artista Falu is this week's cigar of the week. The Artista Falu, particularly the box pressed Robusto.
But before we get to that, if you guys don't know us already, my name is Chris, and I am the whiskey expert and a cigar noob.
And I'm Adam, and I'm the cigar expert, but the whiskey noob.
And as Adam mentioned, today we're finding the perfect pairing for this Artista Falu box press Robusto cigar. Cigars are just mouthfuls, man. Like the names are always mouthfuls. But I have to ask, and I waited till we were on camera to know if it was like to get a true reaction out of you. Do you know what Falu means? What's the deal with the name? Do you know?
Crap.
Nothing. That's okay. I'm like, that has to be something, right?
I knew at one point, Artista, I know you guys are out there. I'm sorry. Pop it in the comments on YouTube.
I'll Google it.
You can go ahead and Google it because I should know that. I did know it when we chose this cigar as the cigar of the week like 2 months ago. I did know it, and I did the research, and that is the part that I failed. But I can tell you what we've got here in the binder, the wrapper, binder, and filler today. It is a complex cigar. This is one I'm super excited for. It's one that's like geared to my palate and what I'm enjoying in cigars right now. We've got a broadleaf wrapper, so it's going to be beautiful. It's got a little bit of that oiliness. And then we've got an Indonesian Sumatra binder. That's going to add a lot of complexity in there. And then fillers is the proprietary Dominican blend that Artista loves to keep because I don't know if you guys out there know this, Artista has a huge farm. They are very, very well known for being like really good farmers. And I apologize, I've got some speed racers outside my window, but they're very they are seed to smoke. They do they grow all their own tobacco. So those proprietary blends, they're keeping the great stuff for themselves. So I am super excited to light this cigar up. Chris, Falu, you got.
It's a little confusing. So I think there's a couple of answers. I think it means hospitable, like somebody who's very hospitable and approachable and like kind. Or it could also mean, according to this website, arriving at a destination or being in motion towards a destination.
I think it's the destination one because it's their final that's their final cap of the trilogy of the Artista line. Like we had the Midnight, the Harvest, and the Falu.
Okay, so I mean that makes sense then. So I'm gonna believe that second site. It was designerlanguages.com, I think. So they didn't fail us. All right, I got to get lit up still because I was too busy Googling that because I was curious.
Fair enough. Man, off the bat, I'm not gonna influence your noob review too much.
Yeah.
But I'll give you a little bit here. I am getting some dark, juicy notes. It's hard. Like this is just right off the bat. Like it's almost like it's almost like a rich milk chocolate, but then like you've got some dark fruits in there. But that broadleaf, it's just a bold. It's. I mean, if in the cigar lingo, I'm gonna say this is a bold broadleaf. Like, and I think it's that Indonesian Sumatra in the middle that's bringing it out. Like the Indonesian spice is there, and that Sumatra finish that is just rich is there. And I don't exactly know, obviously, what sort of primings and stuff like that, or how much Ligero specifically was in the filler. But off the bat, I'm gonna say this. I don't even remember if I have looked this up yet. I think this might be like full body.
Wow. Yeah. This is the only issue I take as a noob with full body as a description is that it's not scary for me. Like it's not like, oh my gosh, but I also have started to become more accustomed to the full body, so maybe I'm a little bit biased here. Okay,
but not power. I'll just say it real quick. Yeah. Sorry. Not like it's full bodied. Like it's not the oomph like it's gonna hit you in the chest. And like power wise, it's more like full body, like robust.
Yes, like your dark roast coffee, like that type of a full body. I only have had a couple puffs. I'm gonna make a fool of myself because I don't even care because it tasted so much like this on the first puff. Right away, chocolate covered raisin, like dark chocolate covered raisin, right off the bat.
Okay.
Hmm.
I don't, I'll puff it and I'll try and find the dark, stupid raisin that's on the bottom of your shoe.
I want you to think about it. All right. So, Artista Falu, very first impression. Keep in mind, I am a noob. I admit that. But it just tasted like dark chocolate covered raisin whenever I took a bite of it, or took a bite of it, took a puff of it. That,
I'm not getting the raisin in it. I'm not
oh,
getting the
I
raisin.
am. Now, did you ever chew at all back in the day or
No, I
still?
never did.
Okay, so Red Man Chew has like a raisiny flavor. It's the type that's like straight up tobacco leaves. Like it's not shredded, it's not dip, it's not in a tin, it's in a bag, and
Yeah.
it has this like tobacco raisiny flavor. And that plus dark chocolate is full force what I'm getting right now.
Hmm. I mean, I said dark fruit, so I mean, it's there a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
It's there a little bit. I'll concede, but I still think, still think you're crazy for all your crazy, little things. Again, there's two types of people. Some people that'll be like, yeah, I had this. What did you say one time? It reminds me of something from Switzerland. And I was like,
It was a type of
what?
chocolate that I had in Switzerland.
Yeah, I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, that's not like I'm getting a little woody notes, earthy notes. Like,
Listen, all right. This is how I do my reviews, and this Artista Falu is a perfect example with what I think tastes like dark chocolate covered raisin. I do my notes where I take a puff of it, and what pops into my head, what I imagine, whatever comes to mind, that's what I say it tastes like. Because it doesn't taste like I took a dark chocolate covered raisin and I ate it. It tastes like a reminder of what that tastes like. And I say the same thing about whiskey, where it's like, it's not, if I say a whiskey tastes like vanilla, it's not the same as a vanilla cream soda or vanilla root beer. It's like, I taste it, I'm immediately reminded of vanilla. And so if it immediately reminds me of a Snickers bar, I'll say Snickers bar. But if it immediately reminds me of a melted chocolate that I ate while I was in Switzerland, that's what you're going to hear from me. And that just is what it
that's
is.
fair enough, and we all have to just sit there and listen to whatever you say.
And you just got to accept it if you're not
Well,
smoking it.
I have to. We still got like another 30 minutes of this episode. I have to. You guys can just hop off right
Yeah.
now. Please don't. No.
Yeah. And hey, if you're not part of the perfect pairing club, then you just have to accept what I'm saying because you can't taste it because you didn't get it. So I don't know.
Yeah.
That was my aggressive plug. That was an aggressive plug, but I went
Aggressive
for
plug.
it.
But we can do the softer part of that, and hey, we'll do the aggressive plug, but we'll give you 10% off with the code PPP10. Sign up for the Perfect Pairing Club. You'll get the cigar of the week and a monthly subscription pack. You get 4 to 5 cigars for about $30, and you get that 10% off if you use the code PPP10. And you get little bonuses like you hear Chris and I riff after we get off the podcast. You get those behind the scenes footage. Every Wednesday, you'll get those, and you get some special gifts when you sign up. Like you get a drum, a whiskey drum, not a Glencairn specifically like this, but a whiskey drum that does the same thing. It's a nosing glass. And you get 2 custom cigars with your initials on it and your last name. And it says Perfect Pairing Club member as well. So you get 2 custom cigars and a drum for free just for signing up.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty solid deal. I don't know how many of them we're going to have. So if we still have them as of the airing of this episode, I recommend that you guys go check it out. And maybe we should, just a note for later, drop a link in the show notes if it's not in there already. But I don't know how many of them we're giving away. So you're going to want to jump on that, I would say, relatively quickly. But we might come back with more later. It's one of those where we got to figure it out. We're giving away free stuff. That's not necessarily an easy thing to do. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Chris and I know we may look like gazillionaires and like we're doing this whole thing on a yacht in Mexico, but we're not.
me in my t-shirts with this wood panel behind me.
Yeah.
I almost forgot though. I got to do this week's trivia. I got so sidetracked by the cigar, which I'm really digging right now, but I got to do this week's trivia. So this week's trivia is actually one of the most common questions that I am asked. It is, how long can you store whiskey for? If you have a bottle of whiskey and you don't open it, and then you open it and you drink some of it, all those different stages, how long can it be stored for? Because It's a very commonly asked question. A lot of people don't just burn through their bottles. Mine sit on my shelf for months and months and months and months because I have to do reviews of new ones, and I can't exactly drink that much. And so it's a really common question. How long can you store a bottle of whiskey for? I will reveal it at the end of this episode.
I don't know the answer.
Yeah, it's a tough answer too. It's a weird one.
I know some. I know some. I know enough
Mm-hmm.
to be dangerous to think I know so much to ruin my whiskey.
There you go. And I have done that. So I have
There you
opened
go.
a bottle that's got a little bit left in it. There's a little bit of a hint there. And I have been like, oh, this tastes terrible. All right. So speaking of whiskeys that don't taste terrible, actually, I've had one sip of it, and oh my gosh, one sip of it with the cigar, I should say. Our first pairing, we've got Virginia Distillery Company's American Single Malt. This is their Port Cask Reserve, 93 proof. So this is an American single malt that is either aged or finished in port cask. I should know that off the top of my head, and I don't. Distilled. Oh, no, 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 wrong thing. Yeah, I don't know if it's just a finish or if it is fully aged in the port casks. Okay, finished. Finished in European Old World casks and barrels sourced locally. Okay, yeah. So it's finished in the port cask.
At least it's not New World casks, man. I hate those.
Yeah, right? Old World casks only.
I threw you off, didn't I?
Yeah.
You looked at me like, what?
This is something I'm supposed to know about? I'm supposed to be the whiskey guy. Okay, so these start off in ex-bourbon and then over to the port casks. I've had it before without the cigar because I always try to do that so that I know what, like if it changes or not. And I had one sip with the cigar, which is really making me want to go have a couple more sips with the cigar. So we'll see how it goes. My lighter was a little low on fluid, and I just did not light this very well. That's totally on me. I'm sorry, Artista. I'm going to try to fix it
try and
up.
repair that. I will say a little bit about this port cask while you get going. I I was impressed when we first received this bottle. I have cracked it open, as you guys can see, just a little bit as well. Um, it has a very complex, uh, like I don't know, like how to. There's probably a whiskey term for this, but age on the tongue, like
Mm-hmm.
like a very complex, like I don't know, first, second, and third. That's what the
Okay.
cigar world is. Like right in the beginning, it feels like it's gonna punch you, and then it's
Uh,
like a teasy punch, and then it goes away very quickly, and then the end is like very sweet, like plum, like
mm-hmm.
just like port, like really, like you really get that port at the end. Like I've had a decent amount of like just port, like actual just port, and it tastes exactly like the aftermath, like what's left on your palate afterwards, tastes exactly like what's left on your palate after you have a sip of port.
Yeah, and then for those who don't know, because I used to not know this, port is a type of wine, typically a dessert wine because it's pretty bold. It's from Portugal. I believe that's why it's called port. And yeah, this is one where sometimes with port finishes, you get just a tiny bit of it. This is one where you get a lot of it, especially because it's a single malt and malts really allow their finish to come through a lot of the time. So that port comes through very strong, very sweet. I loved the way you put for a whiskey noob. That was an impressive review, actually. The first, second, and third, which sometimes I'll call it a transition. I don't think there's really an official name for it.
Transition was better than blah 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 blah.
Yeah, to each
That's
his
not
own.
my way.
Yeah, you figured it out. But the teasy punch in the beginning, you're totally right. It's like, oh, is this gonna burn? And then you swallow it, and you're like, whoa, that just mellowed out. That just is really sweet now. It's a really interesting palate. Not bourbon. This whiskey has a very interesting transition of flavors throughout the palate. That being said, I immediately see some differences with the pairing. I don't know if you've had more time than I have to think about it, but I'm going to go through and do a little bit more before I say what I think I'm getting. But definitely some interaction.
Yeah, there's a lot of play between the two. I think the complexity of the transitions of the port is making it difficult to see if it's changing a lot. But I can tell you, going from the Virginia Distilling port here, the single, I'm gonna get it right, American single malt whiskey port cask to the Artista Falu here. the Artista Falu sweetness that we were getting, that little like that I was getting like some like plum notes a little bit, the dark fruit, boom, like a lot, very bold sweetness. I will say I am now getting some dark chocolate covered raisins. Okay.
Yeah, dude. It
I'm
makes it pop.
almost, it does make it pop. I'm almost getting more raisin though than the
Mm-hmm.
chocolate.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's like one of those where you're a little disappointed because they poured the chocolate a little too thin on that raisin. You're like, ah, man, I was like all raisin.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, like it's sweetness. It's sweet. Like if you are a huge fan of Port Cask and you are not a huge cigar guy, but you enjoy a good cigar on a good night out or celebration, this is the pairing for you. You're going to have this American single malt port cask from Virginia Distilling, and then you're going to grab the Artista Falu and you're going to be like, woo, this is a great pairing. This is a good celebration. It's one that I think too, like would be great with a bunch of buddies having the same pairing. Like
Mm-hmm.
you'd be able to really like talk about it, complexities. Like that'd be a great if you guys out there have like pairing nights, definitely let us know in the Discord. Like we would love to somehow like contribute and help like you guys be
Mm-hmm.
there. Maybe we'll do a pop on some sort of Zoom, or we'll do it in the Discord or something like that. But if you do something like that, this would be a good pairing to do it.
Yeah, and with that, with the way that it makes the chocolate kind of take a slight back seat, it also really is a good pairing if you don't understand what that chocolate note is quite enough. Because if you puff the cigar, then do the pairing, you can see what goes away. But if you sip the whiskey, you take your Virginia Distillery Company port finish. I got the name right too. You take that, you take a sip of it, you puff your cigar. You're going to get this super fruity note, and then you let it go. You don't pick up your whiskey again, and you puff the cigar a few more times. You can kind of watch that chocolate creep back into it, and you start to get more and more of this dark chocolate, which could really help you pick up that chocolate note if you haven't before. Because chocolate's one that I used to always be like, "What are you talking about? This burning tobacco tastes like chocolate." Okay, so
Yeah,
it might help with that too.
that is fair. I will say so. Again, in the beginning, the American single malt port finish from Virginia Distilling wasn't changing a lot, but after going to the cigar a couple times and leaving that sit, and then going to the Artista Falu straight to the port cask, boom, smoky. It's got a little, it brings out the malt. It brings out a little bit of like, it brings the American single malt more out of that. It kind of like pulls. It doesn't make it. It doesn't like make that punch actually happen, but that transition in the middle between punch, fake out, right there in the middle, and then the port finish right there in the middle, it extends that and it
Yeah.
brings it out a little bit more. The port finish is a little less noticeable, and the punch is still there, but it goes right away, and then you get a little smoky, what you would typically expect from American single malt.
Yeah, it's a little bit. It reminds me of there's a brand of wine I've had. I forget the name of it, and they've got just like their normal run of the mill wine. I don't even think it's aged. It's relatively inexpensive, and they have the same wine where they age it in oak barrels. It's a little bit like the characteristic that wine gets from the aging, where you see more of that barrel characteristic come through a little bit. The sweetness and the fruitiness is still there, but you kind of see that barrel characteristic come through, which might be what you're kind of calling the smokiness. That's what it reminds me of.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think you're right about that. You're just using the right terminology.
Hey, I'm just telling you what popped into my head whenever I tasted it. That's all
That's all
I'm
right.
doing.
I'm a whiskey noob. I'll accept it. I mean,
All right. So for pairing number two, we have Green River's Rye Whiskey, which I've only had a couple of times. I'm actually going to rinse out with water and try it again beforehand. This is 95 proof, and this is once again a Kentucky straight rye whiskey. So the vast majority of the grain in this is going to be rye. I think this one might be a 95% rye mash bill. Doesn't say on the bottle, but I think that's the case. So rye, you're typically going to get a lot more spice from. We're going to go a very, very different direction than malt and port. We're going to go totally different direction into spice, some herbs, definitely still some oak, and maybe a little bit of graininess, but it'll be a pretty different direction, I'd say.
yep. And for those of you out there that have probably been like, Chris always has water. Adam's never had water. I have water this time, and I should have been doing it the whole time. Always forget. So, I got water. It only took me, what is this, like episode like 24?
Mm-hmm. Something
Only
like
took
that.
me 24 episodes to figure it out. 24 weeks. Um, but I will say, so after rinsing out with the water, going to the rye, it's not as punchy as I was anticipating. I think it's interesting because I know last week or a couple weeks ago, something like that. Whenever we had that GTO Connecticut, uh, it had the similar, like we had the Green River Weeded. Yeah, the Green
Mm-hmm.
River Weeded. It feels similar, and maybe that's just like my whiskey noob palate going like, I feel like I'm seeing a similarity, but I'm not seeing a similarity between like the burn. I'm seeing a similarity between probably like their whiskey, right? And, like,
Mm-hmm.
because it's probably maybe from same barrels in a way. How does that work?
I think they're both going to be
Same
brand new
barley?
barrels. Same distiller, different mash bill. I would say it tastes pretty different, but here, let me
Okay.
validate. Let me
All right. No,
validate
it's
what you
okay. I'm
said.
a whiskey noob. I'm just whiskey noobing it all over the place today.
It is it is a very very different rye flavor from Hard Truth, which we've had quite a few times.
Okay.
So I think maybe if you're expecting that Hard Truth flavor, because I've always said Hard Truth is pretty unique, this is going to be pretty different from that. The oakiness does still come through pretty nicely in this, though. So you're probably seeing a common link there. In terms of the grain flavors in this one, though, I would argue they're pretty different. Um, Especially on the nose. Okay, so let me try to guide you with it a little bit, because on the nose, the Green River Weeded for sure has like a bready, caramel sweet nose to it. This one's way more of like a perfumey, almost a little bit sharper, like a little bit of a floral, a little bit.
Yeah.
This is a dumb adjective to use, but like a little bit spiky, I guess, or
I'm used
sharp.
to your dumb adjectives,
Yeah,
brother.
fair enough, man. I throw them out there a lot, but that's what it's like.
Yeah, yeah, I can see it. Yeah, yeah. I probably, honestly, I need to just, because I'm the whiskey noob, I need to just stop saying the first thing that comes to my head and let it sit because it comes back a little, like it takes me a second, right? Like I'm like,
Right.
oh, okay, nope. Because I think I did the same thing on the weeded. I was like, man, this is like punchy, and then I was like, no. And then this one, yeah, I mean this, yeah, yeah. I'm just, yep. I gotta make
I
sure that I just continue to sip it.
I think it's good that you're just saying whatever comes to mind, though. I mean, first of all, there's probably a reason why that comes to mind, and second of all, it's good to just be wrong. I mean, like I've said really dumb notes where you're like, I don't know how you would get that from this cigar. It's
Dark
just
chocolate raisin.
yeah. Well, hey, eventually you got there. I was just a psychic, and I knew what was going to happen with the
Hmm.
port finish, but um, but it's good. I mean, I've thrown dumb stuff out there. I put dumb stuff out there online where people disagree with me, and I'm like, I'm sorry, man. That's just what it tastes like to me.
It's true.
The best for me, okay, here's a brief aside. The best for me is when I'm doing a blind tasting. I describe what something tastes like, and then I have somebody in the comments saying, well, but that mash bill is blah, 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 blah. So no way you're getting that from it. And it's like, I don't know what to tell you, my guy. I just sat here for 10 minutes and drank this without knowing what it was. Pretty sure that's what it tastes like. So sorry that it doesn't align with what you think that mash bill should taste like. But that's a brief aside there, because that's why it's so important to do blind tastings. That's why it's so important to just say what you're thinking. I have been very humbled with my latest blind tasting series, trying to pick out what's the rare whiskey. You're going to be really surprised if you do that, because a lot of times your presuppositions are, I hope I use that word properly. I think your presuppositions are going to control what you're tasting a little bit, your biases. And so, anyhow, that was probably not where you wanted me to go with that, but that just brought up that point for me. And I'm like, that's an important point.
No, no. I mean, I think it is an important point, and it's fair enough, and it gave me enough time to do my pairing here, and I'm really enjoying this pairing in a different way than I was enjoying the American single malt port cask from Virginia Distilling. This Green River Rye is bringing that Indonesian Sumatra binder right out of this Artista Falu. Like it's skipping past the broadleaf and it's forgetting any sweet note that we had. and it's bringing a nice spice, a really good spice. It's really reminding me of that. We've talked about it a couple times because I think we both liked it. Um, that Traveling Man from Hiram and Solomon. Like
Yes.
it is like that is the Indonesian Sumatra flavor. So for those of you out there that have been in the Perfect Pairing Club for a while, if you can go back to that episode and maybe if you don't have an Artista or sorry um, Traveling Man because maybe you weren't there or you already smoked it, you can grab another one. By the way, we have 3 packs of all Cigar of the Weeks available now on our website for just $24.99. So we made it relatively affordable for you guys to get some more in case you weren't in the Perfect Pairing Club for this. This cigar is now available, so you didn't miss out. You can go grab it and be a part of it. But just make sure you sign up for the Perfect Pairing Club because it's a lot cheaper that way to get those cigars. But what I'll say is, like, I think if you had this pairing and then that cigar by itself, no pairing on that one, like you would see so many similarities. And that is like a really, really weird like discovery for me because I never usually cigars are like it's crazy because they're all just tobacco leaves, right? And you can't there's no additives. It has to be organic. You can't do anything to them besides process them differently, farm the tobacco differently, all that sort of sunlight, shade, all that. But like, it is crazy that I'm seeing similar cigar in something else. Like I don't know if I've ever had that.
Yeah, and I will just add on to that when I first puffed this cigar, I was a little worried how the Green River Rye was going to interact with it. Total 180 of opinion here, though. Like, this is nice. I think the Green River Rye is making the Artista Falu do exactly what you said. It's making that Sumatra pop. It's giving it almost like a charred wood kind of a flavor, just a really nice character to it. But then also you go back to the Green River Rye, and now you've got like a sour flavor. If you like sour candy, it kind of reminds me of that. And it's two totally different flavors that are really complementing each other. You wouldn't really expect it to go together, but they really do. It's kind of like if you've had if you ever put sour gummy worms in like dirt pudding, where you have you ever had that? You take chocolate pudding and you put sour gummy worms in it. Oh, dude, you're missing out. I saw the confusion on your face. I'm like, you haven't
What
lived.
the heck, man?
But
Uh,
it's one of those things that shouldn't work, and then it does. It's kind of like that. You get some sour from the whiskey, and then you get some savory sweet from the cigar. And that savory is the last thing I want to touch on. I don't know how to describe it other than savory, other than it kind of made my mouth water a little bit. If I went Green River, almost still have a little bit of it in my mouth, and then go straight to the Artista Falu, like a savory flavor pops up. Some weird, deeper flavor that I don't even know what to call it other than savory.
yeah, I like the charred barrel analogy that you did going from
Mm-hmm.
the rye to the Felu, but I want to note I don't know if I was getting exactly sour, but it was sweet. Like it
Mm-hmm.
was at least sweet, is what I'm saying, and that is not prevalent really in the. I don't even know this. This is one of those pairings that kind of ventures outside of our pairing wheel in terms of complementary antagonistic ultra. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think it's ultra because the Indonesian where I mean we can't call it ultra, right? This is one of
Mm-hmm.
those where we want to stretch it to an ultra, but it's not
Right.
because the Artista, the Indonesians pop. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
clearly complementing the Indonesian tobacco in the Felu. But then like I don't think I was getting any of that sweetness in the rye before, but maybe it's because you're not thinking about it. I don't know. But all in all, I would just call this complimentary just because it works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'd say like highly complimentary because they both taste pretty significantly different, I
Yeah,
would say.
yeah,
This is not one where you're gonna try it and you're gonna be like, well, I guess they're both changing a little bit. Like if you've had
yeah.
both of these, they both taste pretty different.
Agreed.
I am that one, at least for my personal palate, that's a good one. That's a really good one. So I'm really excited to see because we're gonna go another different direction right now. For our third pairing, we've got Filmland Spirits Moonlight Mayhem Extended Cut. So this is their Moonlight Mayhem bourbon, but it is or that blend, I should say, but it's their cask strength version of it. And we've had this one before do excellently, and I'm actually What cigar did this do really well with? It wasn't the Hiram and Solomon, was it?
It might have been. I was wondering if you were gonna say it's another Artista. I'm like, then if it's another Artista, here's what we do know. Then it probably blends well with Dominican tobacco.
Right.
But that would be a very very deep, interesting note, and I kind of hope it's true.
We had an 8.7 and an 8.8 with the Hiram and Solomon. So
Nice.
I can't wait to see what happens now. So if you didn't catch it earlier, the link between these is the Sumatra in here. Oh, this is gonna be
Indonesian
interesting. Or
Sumatra.
Indonesian Sumatra. Good call.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is gonna be interesting. So this is a great example too. If it doesn't work, we're gonna see that it could be the same thing on paper and taste different. But if it does work, I'm just gonna be really satisfied because I remember how amazing that tasted.
Whoa. Okay. Um, took a sip, went to the cigar, took a sip. Uh, doing great things with the cigar. I'm just gonna leave it there for now because this is just right off the cuff. Going back to that Filmland Moonlight Mayhem, I don't know why, but it's punchier.
Mm,
Like in the
okay.
beginning, it tasted exactly like I remembered. Like it's got a subtle sweet note. It definitely has that cask strength vibe to it, but not anything too crazy. And I think it elevates that a little bit, that cask strength. It brings, so if you love cask strength, I mean, this could be the pairing for you. You see what I'm saying?
I do. I hadn't gone back to it yet when you first said, so
Oh, okay.
I had
Yeah.
no idea, but I just now did. And it almost, you know, the feeling when a whiskey's way stronger than you think it's gonna be, and it makes like your nose tingle or like your nasal cavity tingle. It like amplifies that a little bit.
For me, it's the tip of my tongue.
Yeah. Like
I can
what
feel like, yeah.
that tingliness is there. Definitely doing something to the cigar though, which I wasn't paying too much attention to right now.
I
Um,
think I think it's bringing back that dark fruit flavor and almost in a different way than the port. The port brought it like this is I'm getting this is a little too crisp for me.
do it. Go in.
The port was doing a little bit like more like plum or grape, and now with the Moonlight Mayhem it's more like dark fruit. And I know those are dark fruits. More like cherry.
Mm.
Like more like a cherry or like even a really rich strawberry. Like
I was thinking strawberry, actually. I was like,
okay,
I'm going to try to guess what he's going to say. And my guess was strawberry.
not like a yeah, but it's got to be one of those that's like almost like too squishy. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Like not the
Yeah.
dry ones. Like that one's yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not like
That's
fresh
my Chris.
strawberries with
That's my
sugar on
Chris.
them.
I'm sorry everybody that hates with Chris and likes that I just keep things simple. That's my Chris for the day.
I'm
Whatever.
not sorry, everybody who hates me. Come to the dark side and say whatever it is that you think because it's so much more relaxing over here.
Fair enough.
That's what I'll
Oz
say.
just drank water. I forgot my water. Anyways, whatever.
Oh, you forgot to drink it in between, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh man, now you're missing out. I needed it because it does make that Moonlight Mayhem a little bit punchier, for sure. It doesn't help that it's like 400 degrees outside right now, and I'm like sweating over here.
Yeah.
But
Because
it
this is a perfect winter pairing.
really is.
And so is the Green River Rye. These are some great winter pairings. Even the port, like these are some great winter pairings, and we're having them in the heat of July. We are filming this pretty early, guys. But yeah,
Yeah,
we like to stay ahead. You got to. We can't film this the week before. It's not possible. But yeah,
this is gonna be a
interesting.
tough one to rank. I think I still have
Yeah,
to go back through them. These have all turned out good. I think I have a clear winner. Probably everybody listening figured it out, but I don't know what happens beyond that. This is a tough one.
yeah. I will say I want to give a little bit more time to this Moonlight Mayhem because I feel like there's a potential for me. Like maybe you can discuss like what you're thinking with the pairings, because for me, I haven't given it enough time, and I think it's got a shot at number one.
Okay.
So I've got to give it its due because I gave that off the cuff, and then I haven't focused on it too much because I gave Chris.
Hey, nothing wrong with that. Okay, here's what I'm thinking. I do like to do the rundown. It actually helps me think through it. So here's what I'm thinking. So I am between, I think it might be obvious that Green River Rye is probably going to be my number one. I don't know what to do with the Moonlight Mayhem and the American Single Malt. I think they're both really good in really different directions. I think the American Single Malt with the port finish, that port finish gets so strong that it's almost too sweet for me. But because you don't really escape it, because when you go to the cigar, you get it there too. So it's almost too much of the sweetness for me. But what I do love about it is as like a dessert, which port is a dessert wine, as a dessert or as a end of the night thing, you really want that heavy sweetness. Like if I'm making an old fashioned at the end of the day, I go with something that's really sweet because I want something kind of desserty. So I really, really like it for a dessert. It doesn't help that, like you said, we're doing all these kind of out of season. But I'm between that and then the Moonlight Mayhem with the Artista Falu is kind of the opposite, where it's punchy. You still probably have this at the end of the night, but it's punchier. It's not sweet. It gives you, the cigar becomes a little bit more full bodied. The whiskey becomes a little bit more full bodied. They both become a little bit stronger. And that's a little bit more exciting, but I don't know which I prefer. This one, I'm going to just say outright, my ranking, especially between these last two, is going to come out to internal bias, I would say. I think it's going to fully come down to which I just like more. But I think it really depends on what your mood is.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That was definitely enough time, so I appreciate that time. But
Of course.
I definitely have my rankings now. Glad I took some time with the Moonlight Mayhem because that is one to cap that one off, just the commentary on it. It is one that you have by the fire. Doesn't have to, but this is my vibe. By the fire, by myself, and maybe it's like snowing. And
Mm-hmm.
like that is a very specific vibe, but I just love like, and it's not like too cold. It's only like 28 and snowing. It's not like 10 degrees and snowing. I'm not a psychopath. Like,
Right.
oh, dude, negative 10 degrees. You go outside. No, nobody does. Nobody likes that. And if you act like you like it, you don't.
Right.
Um, but yeah, like it's just one of those, and like it's just a very calm night, and it's one of those introspective. You're just sitting there, and you're like, life is good. I got problems, but everybody's got problems. People got worse problems than I do. Life's all good. Smoking cigars, drinking a whiskey, and I'm in the moment. The fire's good. It's snowing. Maybe it's like, you know, I don't know, January, where you're like sitting there like, yeah, like there's so many possibilities in January. Everybody's got their New Year's resolutions. Like particularly for me in business, I'm always like, oh yeah, like we're gonna do this year. We're gonna hit this milestone this year, and like none of that's gonna actually happen because business sucks and it's too hard. And
I
but
feel like
anyways, that
this
was
is
very
you.
specific. But yeah,
Yeah, we're getting specific, and I feel like it's you buttering me up to say that that's your number one. Am I correct?
correct. Yeah.
Moonlight Mayhem's number one for you. I can totally see that argument. I think for me, this is going to be a tight ranking, which I should probably put in right now in order to keep myself honest.
That's fine. I do have mine actually. I had the first two pretty much set, and it was going to depend on the Moonlight Mayhem, and that's why I wanted to take some time with it because I had placed it perfectly. So with the Artista Falu, I have the Moonlight Mayhem from Filmland Spirits at number one. At number two, I've got the Green River Rye, and at number three, I've got balloons again. No, I'm just kidding. Sorry, again, for everybody on the audio, somehow StreamYard, the platform we use to stream all this, it has little pop-ups that sometimes it's hearts, sometimes it's balloons. I guess the number three puts up balloons. I don't know. Like, I don't know what it is, but it is what it is. Anyways, at number three, I've got Virginia Distilling Company's American Single Malt whiskey, port, cask.
I have almost the exact same. You just switch the Green River Rye with the Filmland. And as I mentioned, I was really debating the Filmland Spirits versus the Virginia Distillery Company. So I want to make it clear. I'm going to say our classic corny phrase. Virginia Distillery Company's port finish did not come in last. It came in third. It got the bronze medal because it's very nice. These are all three doing something really different and really cool with this pairing. So to jump off, I'll start with your number one because I want to make it easy for you. I had Filmland at 8.3.
Ooh, interesting. I had Filmland sitting at 9.1, baby.
Wow, you liked it that
I
much.
Yeah, I knew it and I was just not paying attention enough. Like I knew I had to just be quiet. Like, sometimes we can get
Mm-hmm.
caught up and then it's like, oh, next, and then it's like, wait. And I knew I had to give that one more time because I was like, there's a sneaky, I really like that. And then I just gave it off the cuff too quickly to really know, like, is this a 9 or is this an 8.5? Like, and that's why I wanted to spend more time and see if it hit that 9. And it's definitely 9.1 for me. I would highly recommend that for anybody that can find them.
Okay. Wow. So now I'm really interested to see what you have for Green River Rye in second. So I had it at 8.8, which was my number one.
I had it at 8.7.
Okay, we're right with each other there.
Yep. So yeah, I mean, I think that one is, I'm like learning to like rye. So maybe that's where
Mm-hmm.
like yours, like the rankings are probably switched a little bit. Um, but that is one of my favorite pairings with a rye that we've had so far for sure.
I agree. It made it taste the most different from normal rye whiskey. Like it has this weird kind of candy note to it, which is just different. And the cigar also was elevated. Whenever both are just working out in a way that I really like, it's really good. And then when they're working out in a way that I really like that complements each other, I'm a really big fan of that. So that's
Well, I
why I
think,
put that one at my highest.
yeah, I think part of it is we finally had a cigar that was willing to punch a rye back. You know,
Yeah.
like because of that Indonesian Sumatra sitting in that binder, I think it was willing, and obviously, I mean, it's not a light cigar. I do think it's full bodied though. I would say full bodied. I'd probably give it a 4 out of 5. I don't think this is gonna kill you, but I'd have to probably have it maybe by itself another time to say if
Hmm.
it's like a 5 out of 5 on the power scale. Um, but yeah, I think that's a big play too. Is like we finally had a cigar that was like had enough oomph to really give rye its play.
Yep. Yep. I think that's exactly right because they both almost started to amplify each other and not in like a painful or harsh way, but just in a flavorful way. They both really just amplified the flavors of each other. And then jumping down to the VDC port cask, I had the Filmland at 8.3. I put this at 8.2. I had it right next to it because it's just different. It's two totally different experiences. So I put it at 8.2.
I actually had that one sitting at 8.2 as well.
All right.
So nailed that. Yeah, I think it's good. The other ones were better, but
Mm-hmm.
there's this one. I think I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just my current palate, but I think maybe the cigar was just, I don't know. Maybe actually, I was about to say the cigar was a little too much, but that's not true because it just brought out that single malt that we were talking about just when we were doing the pairing in the
Mm-hmm.
beginning. I think it didn't have enough gel. Maybe if that's, I mean, it's an 8.2, so it's a good pairing. Like,
Right.
guys, everybody try it. It's good. Like, it's
Yeah.
probably, maybe it didn't gel just with my palate as much as the other ones. That's, again, didn't come in last, came in third.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's almost like they didn't play enough. Like the finish went over to the cigar, and the cigar brought out kind of a woody maltiness in the whiskey, but they didn't. When you move to the Green River Rye, those are both so amplified. So it really depends on what you're looking for. But yeah, once again, it's a bronze medal. 8.2 is still, I think, higher than anything we did 2 episodes ago, which sometimes you just have episodes like that. And this was one where everything just ranked highly. So I feel bad when it comes in third, but it's a very good bronze medal. I mean, it's a very good bronze medal to have versus two other really good pairings.
Yep, 100% agree. 100% agree. Now it's time for me to learn a little whiskey.
Absolutely. How long can you store whiskey for? This is a tough one to answer. I used to, little fun fact behind the scenes for you guys. I used to be kind of afraid to answer this on social media because it's a weird answer. So the answer is it totally depends. If it's an unopened bottle of whiskey, you can almost store it indefinitely if it's in good storage conditions. Let me preface this entire answer and say it depends on your storage conditions. Generally, keep your whiskeys out of sunlight. Keep them in a relatively stable room temperature area. You don't want large temperature swings. If it's a little bit cold, that's pretty okay, actually. You don't want them to be getting super hot and super cold over and over again once they're in a bottle, which is counterintuitive because if you know about aging, you like those temperature swings in a barrel a lot of the time. Anyhow, that's the preface for this. So if it's unopened, you can probably keep it almost indefinitely. There have been incredibly old bottles of whiskey that people have kept and then opened and it still tastes good. If it's opened, but very barely opened, and by that I mean you've cracked the seal on it, but you've drank an ounce out of it, it'll also last a super long time, almost to the point of don't even worry how long you're keeping it for. Once you get down, so I don't worry a whole lot at the pace that I drink it, which is pretty slowly actually. I don't worry about it until it gets to about half. Once it gets to about half, now you have to look at it, I'd say, in terms of months. Once your whiskey gets down to about half of a bottle, I usually like to start the ticker at about 6 months, maybe 8 months if it's right at that half level. When it starts to get below half, give it 6 months at the most. If you get down to a quarter, honestly, give it a couple months at the most. And that's not something you'll probably find online. That last part is from experience. I've had low bottles, maybe a quarter of a bottle left that I've kept for 2-3 months, and then they taste super harsh. It's probably not going to hurt you to drink it. The flavors are going to get worse. This is all because of how much air it is exposed to. The less liquid that's in the bottle, the more air that's interacting with it, and some of the good flavor compounds can leave it, and it can get a little bit more oxidized and become a little bit more harsh. So that's a very long-winded way of saying, yeah, Adam's got some drinking to do.
Yeah, that's a long-winded way of R.I.P. Green River Rye. You're getting drank in the next probably month or two.
Yeah. So if I had to give a cheat code, I'd say above half, don't really worry about it. Below half, start your timer at about 6 or 8 months. And then down to a quarter, you're less than 6 months. I would get rid of it sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's a great tool to just have, like, to know, like, it's one of those things, like, it's almost the equivalent, and I think it maybe should be more well known, but well, I guess maybe I come from the cigar world, so maybe people don't know this as much as I think they might, but like, same as like storing cigars, like, one, you don't really want to store cigars for longer than like 20 years. Cigars actually, they don't get bad, they lose their flavor.
Oh, okay.
Like, think about a leaf sitting in your yard.
Yeah, good point.
It's eventually going to be nothing,
right?
So, like, it's not going to crumble that fast, but, like, because obviously it's been processed differently than the leaf that just fell off the tree. And tobacco is a different leaf, but also, like, it just loses, like, even a Maduro sitting for years and years and years, like, we're talking decades, will eventually smoke similar to, like, a Connecticut. Like, it'll just lose all of its power, and it'll be basically like you're smoking a Connecticut and like you're smoking nothing. But that wasn't exactly where I was going. That is the age part of that. So a little bonus trivia for everybody. I should have kept that
one. Yeah, you should have kept it to yourself.
But, you know, the 70-70 rule in terms of humidity and temperature in cigars, like, you want to keep them relatively close, as close as you can to that 70-70. Like, I like to keep my cigars a little bit drier because I hate them over humidified. So I like to keep the humidity somewhere between like 65 and 67. But that's personal preference. 70-70 rule, like, I think everybody knows that, and I think everybody should know what you just said about all the whiskey age, because it's like, otherwise you're having a completely different experience, and you could hate something that's good or like something that's not.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Even worse, liking something that's not, like, oh man, this is amazing, and then you go to the bar and you buy it and you're like, oh my god, that is not what I thought it was.
Yeah, and the big danger is, what bottles do you want to keep the longest? The rare and expensive ones. So if you've got them down to a quarter and you're like, I just can't bring myself to drink it, you better, or it's not going to be the same whiskey a year from now because it's going to taste totally different. Yep. So last thing is, I would like, now that we've had most of this Artista Falu. Okay. Now that we've had most of this, I forgot throughout the episode, but now we've had most of this Artista Falu, I'd like to guess what would go the best with it. I think we're gonna have different answers, but I'll let you go first. If you had to pick any bottle that we've had so far on the show, what would you pick?
Oh, that we've had so far. No, I was gonna go a future one that I just got. Oh
Go with
crap.
a future one. Do it.
Well, okay. Yeah, I'll mention it. It's the Old Forester 1924.
Ooh, yeah.
It is gonna be amazing with this cigar, and I say it is going to be not because you guys are gonna see it, but because I am gonna do it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have it. And you guys may not see it. Maybe I'll decide to record it and I'll pop it on the Dreamer Cigars page, or maybe just the Perfect Pairing podcast page. If you guys don't follow that on Instagram, guys, go give it a follow. We do have this podcast has its own page as well. But yeah, that's definitely my pick.
I think I'm with you on it's got to be a full throttle type of a bottle. So I think I would love to try a strong Amberana finish with this. So I'd love to try some kind of a strong Amberana, like Barrel's Amberana finish or Nulu's Amberana finish. And then I'd also like to try Nulu's French Oak because it's a very full throttle French Oak bourbon. I'd really like to see how the spices interact with each other. But for sure, something with a lot of flavor behind it.
Mm-hmm. Definitely anything like that is not big time on this. Like I think a couple episodes ago I said Dead Rabbit it would be a dead rabbit.
Yeah.
With a cigar, it would get run over definitely. So,
Yeah. Yep. It seems to be the
all right.
case.
Yep. Chris, another good episode, man.
Absolutely. Cheers.
Cheers.